let's kick it off.
Let's kick it off.
And if these, well, I guess we have to have the mics.
Yes.
So we'll try not to yell and cackle too loud in the in the mic.
So listen, this is our launch of Beast Friends. We're so excited to be here.
Yes. So thank you so much for having us. Thank you to Planned Parenthood, to the Jane Club. Thank you to all of you who are here live hanging out with us. Beast Friends is really all about collaboration over competition. We started this journey as friends. We've collaborated in business, and ultimately we're not one another's best friend. We're one another's beast friend. And do it with one another and be there for each other. So that's the premise of Beast Friends. We hope that you guys will continue to listen with us. We're launching today. We're on SoundCloud, soon to be on all of the platforms. And we're talking about all sorts of fun topics moving forward. And it's just all in the spirit of us coming together as this village that we talk about so often. So it's a lot of kiki, but it's a lot of love and a lot of gems dropped too. So check us out. And today we are discussing Modern Motherhood. But before we even do that, I guess we should formally introduce ourselves, right?
So I'm Dezi Santiago. I am a proud mother of two, and a servant is what I call myself best. And pretty much my makeup is a serial entrepreneur. Some have called me an orator, which I laugh at because I'm always nervous when I'm speaking in front of people. But I'm learning to walk in purpose and really just journeying out this newfound self and learning how that works and how I can use it to really grow my girlfriends, my village, and those around me. I'm also the co-executive producer and co-founder of Ask Anything with Dezi, which is a project that Kelli and I were blessed to endeavor in the beginning of this year. So we have had a very combustible breakout year, and I'm excited to be here and share with the Jane Club at Essence, and so grateful for Mashonda for joining us.
Yeah. And I'm Kelli Coleman, the other half of Beast Friends. Similar to Dezi, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I'm the proud mother of a beautiful 7-year-old daughter, Dylan. And I'm just curious. I love to learn new things. I love to explore, and I love to apply my acumen and talents to an array of things. So I'm really excited to be able to walk out my purpose, and working with women and seeing them thrive is super exciting to me. And we're so happy to have none other than Mashonda Tifrere here. She is, I would say, the best person to talk about modern motherhood with. So we are very blessed, yes, to have this opportunity. As you all probably know, Mashonda is an amazing author of the book Blend, which everyone should check out.
Great read.
It is a great read.
I wouldn't put it down.
Yes. In addition to, of course, being a mother, an avid art collector and curator, and I'll let you tell us the rest. I won't boast too much for you.
So happy to be here. Thank you for having me as your first guest. It's quite honorable. You've covered a lot of it. I wrote this book. It was released in October. It's pretty much it started off as a journal of my life, coming from a married woman to a separated woman to a divorced woman and then a single mother, and now a successful co-parent blending family situation. That journey alone was not easy.
Yeah.
A lot of ups and downs, a lot of ego checking, a lot of rebuilding of self-acknowledgement. And the first 4 chapters are all about healing, which is something as women we must master for ourselves before we can blend or co-parent or be in any relationship with anyone. Aside from the book, I'm also a curator, and I have a company called Art Leader that I launched 3 years ago, where I represent female artists. I have an exhibition, a pop-up exhibition next door that you all have to check out. Thanks to the Jane Club and Ty for making that happen. And I started off as a singer-songwriter 20 years ago. So some of you probably know the vintage classics.
Yes.
We always, we're here for that. Yes.
That's where it pretty much started for me, and I've evolved evolved into the person I always wanted to be, with a lot of work, a lot of self-work. And I'm the mother of a beautiful boy that's somewhat like a grown-ass man right now.
I say that all the, I'm sorry,
like,
are you
where did my
7 or
baby
27?
go?
Yes.
He's 12, his name is Kasim, and he's a professional soccer player already. We just got back from Ecuador tournament, so he's really living his dream, which I encourage, and I'm just happy to be here today with all you beautiful women. The last time I was in New Orleans, I came out here to do relief work right after the hurricane. So it's a blessing to see the city up and going and everyone happy and smiling and healthy and beautiful. So thank you all for having me.
I love it. I love that you're here. Yeah. So, in the spirit of wellness, like what you talked about, I know one thing we really wanted to jump into was just getting into what maternal health and wellness looks like, especially when, being a boss. So obviously we talked about all of our hats, we're multi-hyphenate. So how do we ultimately make sure that we are taking time for that healing, and what does that actually look like? That's something we wanted to throw out there and to discuss today.
So for me, the healing really starts with going very deep. It's always not the pain that you think is on the surface. It's usually stemming from childhood traumas. The little girl that's inside of us that still has issues with her dad or her mom. Those are really the foundational problems that we have to open up. As hard as it is, we have to go in there and talk to that little girl and let her know it's okay. And sometimes a lot of that has to do with going to a therapist. It's kind of a stigma in our culture, but you have to sit down with someone that has medical training around the issues, not just your pastor or your mother or your girlfriend. It's worth it to sit down with someone that can really help you understand, yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's a good point because, again, like you said, in our our culture, sometimes we stay away from that, we veer away from that, and having that opportunity to have someone that knows how to kind of mine through, the emotional capacity of a person really makes a big difference. In your book, you even talked about the difference between emotions and feelings, and how your past is connected to your emotion, and when those things are triggered, it changes your feeling in that particular moment in the present. And so that was something that you said you really learned about yourself and about the process when you were dealing with your therapist. So it's just keys like that sometimes we need from someone that knows how to just mine through and pull out that particular step. You know how we need that applicable thing?
Yeah. I think, too, the other thing that you mentioned that really hit home for me, because, I'm a successful co-parent now, too. Woo, woo.
Shout out to the co-parent.
Go, Sar. Yes, so, because it's a real thing. Like, it's a real thing. I'm very
It's
proud.
a journey.
It's a journey for real. And it's hard to find joys in that journey sometimes. I'm gonna be honest. But when you said that, it really resonated with me, because I'm like, no, that is hard work. And you mentioned something. You said, hey, it's not time that heals all, like we hear so often, but it's really you, right? So I think for a large part of the time that I was trying to adjust to that life as a single mom / co-parent, I was thinking like, oh, with more time, I'll be fine. And this applies to so many things, like not just as it relates to transitioning into being a co-parent or whatnot. It's just like any trauma, like what we're talking about. We're so quick to think that with time we will automatically heal, but ultimately it's like, what about the work? Yeah. So I talk about this with all my girlfriends, with Ty, with Des, with everyone, about just like that self-awareness and that self-work. So I think that's awesome that we kind of share that and make that paramount in this whole process of healing. Yeah.
I think, too, it plays to, especially when you're not even just an entrepreneur, but when you are a boss in whatever lane you're in, if you are dominating, in your marketplace, for instance, you still have to know that home has a foundational strength, because a lot of times we go out and we put on these masks and we pick up our shovels and we get to doing what we do, but we go home and we're miserable and we're broke down. And so I think that you have to do the work. You have to do the self-work. I think you have to.
Yeah, so that's a huge part of the healing. So what else, as it relates to maternal health and wellness, do you think? I mean, for me, it can be things like just as simple as travel. I mean, I know that, you love a good vacay. You love a good moment. Right. Yes.
So, yeah, but there's a thing with travel. And a mentor told me a long time ago, she said, no matter where you go, there you are. So you think
that's a cheat. That's a cheat.
You think that you're traveling to escape your issues, but when you get there, you're still there with your issues.
Yeah. So good.
And that hit home because, when the divorce and separation was happening, I used to jump on a plane with my baby and just try to escape the pain. And, I used all these different methods to try to heal, and it didn't work. The real work is actually sitting by yourself.
That's so good.
In stillness, in quietness, and really tearing yourself apart, breaking yourself down, and then putting the pieces back together again, leaving out the pieces that you don't want to be a part of your life anymore. So the real healing it's a self-mastery sort of thing.
And being vulnerable enough to do that, right?
Yeah, I know I had to go through it about 2 years ago. I had to go through that process of forgiving my daughter's father, but what I realized, it wasn't him that I had to forgive. I had to forgive myself, and I had to take accountability for my perception of his role in my daughter's life and in my life, and just kind of be honest with myself about where my expectations realistic. Like, how can I project on someone else the way I want things to be? And it really changed my life because it made me go into every relationship. And this is how I got to this place of collaboration over competition. It made me go over every relationship and go in saying, I want to let you be your best self, and whoever that is, I'm okay with that. And I'm not putting you in my box. I'm not expecting you to be who I want you to be. I'm going to let you be yourself. I don't want to know your representative. I want to truly know you and support who you are. And this way, I don't have to be offended. I don't have to be, messed up or hurt by if you don't do something the way I thought you should do it, or if you don't do it the way I wanted it done. And it really freed me up to be a better friend, a better co-parent, and even a better mother, because I stopped projecting on other people what I thought it should look like, and I just dealt with me, my own situation.
You helped me with that, because I get a little control freak-ish.
It is definitely a let go of control. It's a surrender.
So you helped me with that a lot too. That's a good one.
So I think the thing with forgiveness, and you said it the right way, I don't believe in it anymore. I believe that the only person you need to forgive is yourself.
Yes.
Because forgiveness kind of puts, like you said, a projection of our own expectations and ideas onto other people, whereas we need to allow people to live their journey the way they need to in order for them to learn and evolve. And when we look for someone to say, oh, I'm sorry, that's kind of throwing them out of alignment with what they were actually supposed to do to learn what they needed to learn.
That's so good.
And so instead of forgiving, even with my son, I don't want you to tell me you're sorry, because you could say that a million times. Tell me that you acknowledged what you did and how it affected me. And if you truly love me, you're not going to do it again.
Period.
I love that. There's a quote I heard to that end that said, apology without action is manipulation, right? So at the end of the day, if someone is, consistently saying sorry, but there's no action behind it, I think that just hit home for me. I'm like, okay, well, let's pay attention to what we do. Yeah, so good. Well, because we've talked about healing, we've talked about some elements of wellness, and all of these things are things I'm hoping are helpful to our listeners and to our guests here today, and even moving into further what that blend looks like, right? Especially when you have that handle on yourself and you're actively doing that self-work. How do we now move into what it looks like to successfully co-parent, and what are some tips or some hacks to do that?
So in order to successfully co-parent, communication is key. It's number one. It's also an idea of removing the me's and the I's and understanding that it's not about Mashonda. This child in these two people that are helping me raise him. The way I feel about him or her has nothing to do with how they're raised. They're helping me raise him if they're doing a good job. So ego has so much to do
That's big.
with blending and co-parenting.
Amen. I'm just going to say amen.
It's got a lot to do with everything.
With everything. With everything.
Yes, it does. It does have a lot to do with everything.
It's your enemy.
So yeah. And I think too, a lot of people too you have to be very confident in that stance though too, right? Because a lot of people, will judge or project. I know a lot of people don't understand my relationship with my daughter's dad, because they're like, are you guys together? Are you guys together? We didn't know. What do you guys, like? No, we're just cool. And,
Right.
we're just focused on this parenting thing. So sometimes it's hard to make other people understand, kind of how that dynamic works. But I think to confidently stand in what you said, like banishing the ego and just focusing on, what's most important.
You just get to a place where you don't even care what people say or think
Facts,
anymore,
yeah.
because you see your child and you know when they are flourishing and when they're not.
Yeah.
And you can tell that the energy you put into making their life as comfortable and peaceful as possible, that's the only thing that you should care about. I mean, I've had people DM me or even write in my comments, y'all must be having a threesome, because I just don't understand how. I'm like, how could you not even try to understand how when there's a child involved? It's
Most importantly.
that's just number one. And once again, it's just a stigma, or a taboo
Yeah.
in our culture that an ex can't get along or is not supposed to get along with the new wife or the new girlfriend, especially if it was messy in the beginning, which it was. But you get to a place where you see the bigger picture, and the bigger picture is the child and the child's well-being.
Do you think, Mashonda, one of the things that really helped you even get to that place was dividing the fact that your ex-husband, this was no longer my engagement? Like, you just had to cut that part off? Like, you know how so many times we're in relationships and they take a turn and they end, and it might not end on our terms. So sometimes we're still holding on to a piece of something that really doesn't exist anymore. Do you think that holds people back from getting to that clearing point where they can accept this other person or kind of unite?
There's absolutely no blending or successful co-parenting if you still have feelings for your ex.
Say it again for the people in
Yeah.
the back.
Bold letters.
There is no peace if you still have feelings for your ex and he's in another relationship. And the child is going to pick up on that. And it wasn't that I still had feelings for him in the beginning, but it was that I was so comfortable being in this unit of what I thought was supposed to be a perfect family, and I didn't want to let that idea go. And that complicated a lot in the beginning, because I wanted what I wanted, which was a husband, a home, a child, and it wasn't my reality anymore. And so I had to let it go, because he had moved on, and I was still there feeling like, but what about what we had? What about this? What about, it doesn't exist anymore. And women have a hard time letting go. And so one book that I will recommend is The Secret of Letting Go by Guy Finley. Saved my life. I read it probably about 5 times. It really defines the true self to the false self. And when you're operating from false self, it's all of that. I, me, all these ideas we create that were supposed to happen, that we expected to happen. Then the true self is when you're just moving with love. You're just flowing through life. You're accepting. You're surrendering. You're letting go.
You're faithful, right? So we talk about that a lot too, right? It's like you can't claim to be, and then when things like this occur,
When things don't go your way.
exactly, when
That's
things
so
don't go
good.
your way, exactly, yeah. So I love that, and everyone picked up on that book, Reco.
The Secret of Letting Go by Guy.
Somebody's taking notes.
This is right. Sis is on Amazon already. Okay. Yeah. Good.
I think that just even, you know, sharing that path with us and how to get over to that other side, even inviting in this whole concept of co-parenting, including the other person, the partner, really speaks to the idea that as a single mother, for me, I always say I'm a supported mother instead of a single mother, because though their father is not necessarily my husband or my man, and we're not in that type of situation, I have so many people that support this motherhood that I'm venturing, out in, and my family's so supportive. But, to be able to have the support of your partner and their partner, it just makes the dynamic so much more forceful, because when everyone can be on the same page, you create an environment for your child that allows them to grow and evolve the way they should in a healthy way. Another thing that was even mentioned in your book, and I've seen this in my daughter, because I have two daughters by two different fathers. My oldest is Aiden. She's an 11-year-old, an amazing, incredible person, like a superhero. And then I have Lenny Zoe, who is a 4-year-old, and she runs everything.
The firecracker, the enforcer.
The full sitch. And I look at the difference in my 11-year-old, because her father and I weren't together. Once I was pregnant, it was a wrap. And he wasn't involved for quite some time, or we weren't involved for quite some time. And so the confidence level that my 11-year-old had versus the confidence level of my 4-year-old, in which she had both of her parents involved actively, is completely different. And so you spoke to that even in your book about your son. It was one point where even though you and your ex were interacting, so you thought in front of him appropriately, he could sense what was going on, and so things started happening. Can you speak to that honesty or that transparency that had to happen?
Definitely. So kids, we all know kids pick up on energy like it's second nature to them. They are pure, and they can see right through us, and they can feel what's going on between the people they love.
They can.
And in the beginning, we thought we were doing a good job at masking, our animosity towards each other. But he knew, he felt the energy. He knew that we wouldn't talk to each other or smile at one another. And it started to affect him in school. I got a call from the teacher that he was present, but he wasn't present. He was acting out. He was emotional. And that was really what pushed me to even want to blend. That incident made me, I always say the universe will send us signs.
Yes.
If we pay attention. Some people don't pay attention to their children.
That's so true.
And I paid attention to my son because I had a really difficult pregnancy, and I promised God that if he was born healthy and safe, that I would be everything I had to be for him. And I always paid attention. So when that happened, it pushed me to wake up and make that phone call to his father and just say, listen, we got to do better. We got to sit down. We got to figure this out. And that's where the healing began between the two of us. So once we were on, I guess, a cordial path, then I knew that the next step was beginning a relationship with his wife. And so I said to him, for my son's 6th birthday party, I said, I really want Alicia to come. I think it's a good idea. I think it's, Kasim is going to be really happy to see all of us in one room. And he was like, okay, invite her. I said, okay. And that was one thing about my ex. He never forced us or forced me to make the move or make us like each other or make it work. Where I find like a lot of men kind of like force that relationship. Yeah. And that's not going to ever be successful. It's something that both women have to want to do. And I did it for my son. I reached out and she accepted and she showed up, and I write about the whole thing in the book. The day after the party, she invited me out to dinner. And I was like, oh my God, how am I going to sit there at a table with her? And what's this going to be like? And I prayed and I meditated. And I got to the restaurant, and we had like this little private area downstairs. And we sat down across from each other. Now, this is the first time we interacted one-on-one since everything.
Wow.
And it was about 3 years after everything hit the fan.
Yeah.
It takes a long time sometimes.
Yeah, that's a cheat too. Doesn't always happen.
You cannot rush these things. You really have to let people heal on their own terms. And up until that point, we weren't ready to sit down at a table across from one another. But that day we were ready, and the conversation started. And I'll always say that God spoke through me at this moment, because I don't even know where these words came from.
That happens often.
But I looked at her and I said, you know, tonight I don't want to talk about the past. I want to talk about the future, because one day we're going to share grandchildren.
Wow. Wow.
And she looked at me and she was like, and I was like, where'd that come from?
Like, did I mean to say that? No.
But
Like,
it made so much sense. It's like, we cannot afford to hate each other. We can't afford to live in the past. We can't afford to be in this energy of negative, because we both now have children by this same man, and our children are going to grow up. They're going to have children. And I'm not going to be a 60-year-old person sitting at a graduation mad at you.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know?
No.
But you know what? So that's where the healing paid off. Like, it wasn't even that didn't come. It was like, you were probably sitting there like, where did that come from? But at the end of the day, that was like your payoff. Like, that was your payoff for
it was a
your
proof of your
self-worth.
evolution.
Like, that was kind of, that was proof that you were really doing the healing work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But up until that dinner, I had already been consciously putting in the work. Seeing my doctor, reading self-help books on YouTube, searching up ways to heal and be happy and do this. And listen, we have so much access to information now. There's no need for anybody to be walking around upset. And after that, it's just been, consistency is also very important in these blended families. After that, we've made an effort, all three of us, to have family meetings at least once every 2 months, where we sit down and we discuss Kasim's development, his homework, his diet, whatever it is, visitation. We have group text. There's constant communication. And I started writing this book before. This book has been many things, by the way.
It wasn't always blend.
It wasn't always blend. It has evolved with me. At one point, it was a not so good tell-all.
Right.
I'm happy and I'm blessed that it is what it is now, because it's helping so many people.
I literally was gonna jump in and say, like, I haven't crossed that bridge yet with the blends in, with two other people. I've just mastered the one.
Takes time.
But I'm like, when that time comes, I just love that there's a blueprint for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you definitely lay the
I'm
blueprint.
appreciative of blends, if not for anything else, but for that, because I'm like, okay, well, you got a girl now. Hold on. Let me blend.
So I just appreciate you sharing so much and really laying out an applicable blueprint. We got to open up for our audience.
Yes,
we need to hear from you guys. We want you guys, if you have a question, anything you want to add. Have you?
Okay.
What's your question?
We'll have to repeat it, or you want to speak into? Okay.
I know sometimes, my name is Wayne. Hi guys. So I know sometimes when it's a situation similar to yours, it becomes less about the relationship, like it becomes, how can I articulate this? It becomes less about your feelings for the guy than it becomes between you and the woman. Like, you don't want her to win. Has it ever been that situation where it was you just didn't want her to win and you didn't want to give up because of that, and it was less about the guy, less about your ex-husband? Yeah.
In the beginning, there was definitely this feeling like, that's my husband, like, that's my man, that's my person, No. Of course. Like, we become so attached to people, we start to think they belong to us.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of the pain, it's self-inflicted, by the way, because they're living their life the way they're supposed to. You know, we can't make people be the way we want them to be.
That's right.
So yes, of course, that's just natural. I would never fabricate that or lie and sit here and be like, oh no, I was perfect and I wasn't mad at her. No, that's just real. It's human. But acknowledging that also has so much to do with being able to heal that, you know? And I think that as women, as Black women, we know how to hold on to some stuff.
Ooh, baby.
Everyone in here, if our listeners could see the faces of everyone.
You should see the faces.
We know how to hold on to some stuff, and we know how to do our best to make people feel it when we're not feeling them. And so I just feel like when there's a child involved, I don't know what we would be if my son wasn't involved. But he's
That's fair.
I don't know, and I probably would be off living in another country. That's what I always say.
That's what I say all the
Yeah,
time.
I wouldn't be. I'd be so far removed from everything. But that's not my reality. And so I knew that as a human, a mother, a woman, I had to redesign my ideas, my thoughts, and become who I needed to be to better serve myself and my son. And that's evolution.
That is definitely evolution.
Yes.
We have another
Another
one on
question?
that side.
Oh,
You want to
two.
pass her your mic?
Okay. We're coming right back around that way.
Okay. Yeah. I'm so excited to see this book. I didn't know it existed, but I've been wanting a book like this. I've been wanting to write a book like this. I've been co-parenting for like 10 years. I have a 13-year-old and an 18-year-old. And one of the things I was wondering if you could talk to, we have the co-parenting thing down. Neither one of us has successfully entered like another marriage. And it's something that's really misunderstood. I'm glad that you're like, by people that we date, they're like, are y'all fucking? Like, what? And I'm like, no, like, it's the kids that, but one of the things I was wondering you could talk about is boundaries. Because I feel like that's one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is like, how to keep boundaries and also what boundaries don't make sense anymore. Like, you're trying to, like, you have to recreate them, I guess. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
There's a whole part on boundaries.
Wait, are you selling books here? Do you have a book?
I have a few for sale. I do. Our boundaries are pretty simple because we pretty much see eye to eye a lot on parenting style. But as women, we know, Alicia and myself, we know that my rules at my house have nothing to do with her rules at her house and vice versa. And we won't project that onto each other. So she has 2 small children. When my son's at her house, he has to go to sleep a little earlier. He's got to go to sleep at 8:30, whereas at my house, I let him stay up until 9:30 because he's the only one there. But she doesn't want him to influence the younger ones. I'm not going to argue with her about that. So, you know, it's just commonsensical what the boundaries are. She doesn't like him to be on the phone too much because of the younger ones. So he's on the phone less there. And he has a problem with all of this, of course. So he's constantly trying to manipulate the situation, but it's important for the parents to be on one team and, you know, stay on that, because as soon as the child notices divide, they're going to run with it and they're going to start playing everybody against everybody. So there are definitely boundaries involved.
Did you mean boundaries too as it relates to other relationships?
Yeah, I think for me, it's 2 things. I think people don't understand the sort of like the unit of, and so it's like there's a boundary around that.
Yeah.
And then there's also a boundary with like the exes. Like we went to mediation, and one of the things that we figured
Got you.
Was like, that's just like a line you have to put around stuff when things start getting heated. You can't go back.
Okay, I understand. So yeah, we've all agreed to disagree. And if we're in a meeting or some sort of situation and we realize the energy becoming something that it shouldn't, we've all agreed to walk away and come back another day. We're not going to argue, so that is a very important boundary.
Okay, yeah, let's get this other question.
I just had a comment. So my parents, when they divorced, they both decided to remarry. But before, when they were dating, my mother was like, I have to meet this woman that you're dating because who's ever around my children, I want to get to know them. And I think it was the best thing that could have ever happened for us. We wouldn't know that my mother would pass at 50. I was 25, but my stepmother, I was a teen mom, so my daughter's 33 now. I'm a grandmother. So I would love to get the book for my daughter to help her, but the example that was set was everything for me and my siblings because my stepmother helped when my mother needed to get my brother out of LA, and my brother lived in Pasadena and was raised with my stepbrother and stepsister and then my half-brother. And so now we're all this big blended family. When my mother passed, my dad actually moved in with my stepfather. People were like, oh, you guys are very strange. But but it was really a blessing for that to happen, and so much so that my sister passed, my stepmother passed. My stepmother did an excellent job with my daughter after my mother passed as a grandmother. But just on Father's Day, I was able to take all the fathers out, including my brothers and my stepfather and my dad. It's like 8 men with my nephews, and this is just what happens. We just become this big, huge family of love. So I appreciate what you shared because we can do it.
And that's a good point. In the book, I definitely write about the meeting, which was the first time Kasim met Alicia. And me and Swiss had always made a pact that we would not bring our child around a new partner unless we were present for that first meeting. And we had a dinner together, and Kasim was probably about 3 or 4 at the time. And I introduced Alicia as Daddy's girlfriend. And we had come up with the whole thing beforehand in a way where we knew it would make Kasim feel comfortable. I never wanted him to feel like he was betraying me by liking another woman.
That's really good.
You know?
That's good. Oh, yeah.
We're gonna
one more
do-
question. Yeah.
No.
Okay, no, go ahead, go for it. Live your life, go.
I had a few friends like that.
That's how I am. Like I just say, I have a whole newfound respect for you. I was just looking at that a few years ago because my cousin, she has a younger family. She had a baby by her ex. Her now husband, his wife passed away. They have two kids. They're like a real blended family. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
My thing is welcome. So my thing, just a general question is for all of you. How do you manage your time and stay busy and stay focused on what you're doing outside your house, yourself, your business?
So we didn't get into it as much, so maybe this is like part 2 of this conversation, but I always say, like, I'm never ashamed of my village, right? And we touched on it a little bit, but I think sometimes, especially, as Black women, there is a bit of a stigma around like delegating a little bit and help and, making sure that you have that support system around you so it allows you to move around and to show up as your best self. And that self-work has to happen, when you're by yourself. Like a lot of times you need to take that time. So I would say that building that village is so important. And that probably needs to be like an entirely different episode.
We definitely have to have an episode about that.
Yeah.
I wanted to speak to that because I have just this whole idea that I work my life around. A lot of people ask, how do you balance? And I do not like the word balance because I think that it's misunderstood. One of the things that I focus on as a boss and a mother and all of the things is that I'm willing to tip the scale. and I don't feel guilty when I tip the scale. I'm very discerning when I tip the scale, and I only tip it when I feel like it's necessary, but you have to be willing to tip the scale. What does that mean? That means sometimes you're not gonna make it to everything, and that's okay, right? Sometimes you won't be at the meetings, and sometimes you won't make it to the games. And you have to be okay with that. That's the only way that you fully thrive in all the areas, right? And I just like to share that because so many times I hear people at these summits and things say, oh, you have to balance. I mean, it works for them maybe, but for me, balance is not it. Like, I tip scales all day.
And I very rarely have mom guilt too, right? Because for me, I'm like, listen, I build my life around my child. Like, I know that. Like, I'm confident in that, right? And so as much as I can be present for, I am present for. But to Dezi's point, it's like the times that I can't be present, I have that support system in that village, and I know that, you know, people are showing up for her when I can't physically be there. So
Yeah. It's just you. Like, I don't have any kids yet, so it's just you as far as like.
Oh, it's even easier for you, sis.
Right. What's the problem here?
Yeah, no, but I think too, I treat self-care like meetings though. I mean, it sounds,
That's good, friend.
rudimentary, but I do. So somebody will call me like, oh, I need to meet with you at 9. Well, no, because I'm getting my body together at 9 o'clock. So I can't do that. Or, you know, I'm having lunch with a friend as opposed to a business meeting. Like, self-care is built into my schedule, and it's just as high of a priority as anything else, you know, that I'm responsible for doing. So that's like one, I think, really easy first step that you can take.
And for me with self-care, when we're thinking about just the self part of it, I always say that my self-care starts inside first. I do take care of outside too, because it's all like, it all works together. But I take moments. Like, I don't start my morning thinking about other things. I don't start my morning on my phone. I don't even open my mouth to any other person. I get in my mind. I control my thoughts. I think on things that I'm grateful for, things that I appreciate. I speak to God. I'm grateful. I pray. I meditate. I don't start a day before I do that, because what it does is it's like the premise of how the rest of your day will go. When you take control of your day in the morning, it creates a different path. And what I do is I don't just like manipulate my mind or anything like that. I actually open myself up and I ask God, what is this day for? What do you have for me to do today? What is it that I'm supposed to receive today? And that's the type of mindset I go out in my day with. The other thing is, I surround
myself with people who do that and remind me to do it. Beast friends.
Another thing I was gonna say, there's a great book to get. It's called Commanding My Morning, or Commanding Your Morning, by Dr. Cindy Trim. And it's a good book because it just gives you like a little blueprint. It's a spiritual blueprint, but the principles that she shares in the book really gives you like step-by-step ways you can kind of go in and start your day. And what it does is it cancels the busyness out. And stop confessing busyness. Start confessing I'm capable. I have a lot of things going on, but I'm very capable.
Awesome. Ty?
Yeah, I know. I so don't typically need a mic, but my voice is gone. I had a question about this whole blended idea. I'm single for right now, not for long. Because listen, amen. But I was gonna say, like, what's been very interesting, like, as you get up in age, like, I started to realize that I will probably be a part of a blended family. I grew up in a very blended family, raised by both sides of my paternal and maternal grandparents, as well as my mom. So I understand that, but it's been an adjustment for me to think about being in a blended family for real, because I'm 41, so the likelihood of me meeting a man who doesn't have children and an ex are real. But I have been...
I would be asking more questions.
Girl, listen, you should as well. You should. Actually, I want him to have a whole... no, anyway. But with that being said, I was seeing someone recently, wonderful guy, 3 beautiful boys, and, you know, I wasn't excited to meet the kids just yet because of what Mashonda said. I think that rule about how they bring their mother into it is a precedent. And so how,
as a single woman who will likely be with a man and go into a blended family, and I don't have any of my own birth children, even though I'm everybody's godmother. What advice and counsel would you give to me? Because I could be your children's stepmom. Who knows? I'm just saying.
True, I mean, that.
Not yours for sure.
Well, yeah.
You wouldn't want mine, but okay. No, that's a good question.
I was following. I think so. This conversation has inspired me in a lot of ways too, because I'm like, I need to go back to the home front and have some discussions, because there's some things that like we haven't covered yet. But I think one thing that is probably just a known is like, hey, I want to know that my daughter is going to meet this person, and I want to know a bit about this person, and I want to feel as though you're confident that this meeting should be taking place. So it's more of a discussion between me and my co-parent versus me being as concerned with you. So it's the trust and confidence that I have in his decision making and making sure that he's being discerning about it. If he comes to me and he tells me, hey, I would like to introduce, Dylan to this person, I'm trusting that it's serious enough, it's vetted enough, I have that level. No, I don't think I would want to be there. I don't know. For me, I would feel like it was intrusive, and it might make her feel uncomfortable if I was there, because my daughter uncomfortable, because I would not want her reaction to be based on me being there.
Right.
Yeah. So I would just be more.
I was gonna say, but
for you, I would say I would almost not request, but I would lean into more of that one-on-one meeting. Like, I wouldn't want the ex to be present. So if I were you, it would be like, hey, it'd be great if like me, you, and your sons could go to lunch. That's how I met. I mean, my ex has an older daughter, so that's how I met. That's how I met his older daughter. Was we had like a day date, and it was just the three of us, and she was 13, child. That was rough. She's the love of my life now, but I'm just like, but I would request to have that time alone together.
Talk to the mother beforehand?
I think that depends a lot on how old the child is. Like, if you're dealing with like a 1-year-old, a 2-year-old, you want to have a relationship with the mother, some sort of communication, because that's like a baby. But if you're dealing with a 7, 8, 9, 10 who's more independent, who could come home and tell you exactly what happened.
That's true. That's fair.
Different.
Mine is going to spill all of the tea.
Right.
So
if your child is able to communicate in that way. But for me, my son was only 3, and I needed to know who was going to be watching his butt, who was feeding him. I need to have your number because I want to know that he's okay at 9 o'clock at night.
Now, I would want to eventually build a relationship. Like, I have a great relationship with Ashley's mom. Yeah. So I would eventually want there to be a relationship, but I think the initial meeting, depending on age.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, to your question, from the perspective of the single woman with no children going into the situation, I would really be more interested in what my mate's perspective was, what made him feel most comfortable, because he's the only one that knows the other party side of it. And then allowing him to kind of, give you the open door. Like Mashonda made a comment that one good thing her ex did not do was he didn't force it. But I'm sure in some sense he gave Alicia some, opening to say like, it'll be healthy, So I think that's really predicated on you and your mate, your partner deciding what makes sense for you all and your dynamic, and him knowing what, his ex's situation may be or perception may be, or even temperature, if that makes sense. And then from there, maybe just being encouraging about the whole wanting to be involved in the family, whatever that looks like. So not really going in with the idea of like how the meeting should go, but just being willing to be open to any of it. You might meet the children and not be excited because they might give you a hard time, not the mother. You know what I mean? So The dynamics just change. I think that's really based on you and your mate's understanding of what that looks like.
That's good, friend. The last thing I'll say, though, is that sometimes men don't pick up on certain things that are just like those unspoken things with women. So the same way like Mashonda's ex didn't force it, some men do so desperately want it to click that it almost can be like too much initially. So you have to follow your instincts. Yeah, like bring it down. Yeah.
This is such a good conversation. Of course, it could go on and on, right? But we do have to close. And before we close, I had to pull this quote out of the book, this excerpt out of the book, because honestly, I almost didn't go to sleep reading this book because it was just a blessing to read. One, the transparency and authenticity, but two, the way you broke it down. It was an easy read, and I could relate. And the words you used seemed so genuine, like you really walked this thing through. So there was an excerpt, and it was in chapter 7 called Bridging the Gap. So when you guys get the book, go to chapter 7. And it was a subsection called Divine Feminine. And this is the excerpt. This is what it said. What I know for sure is that women have superpowers and can fine-tune the vibrations of the world when we work together. Women are nurturers and collaborators, full of creative energy. We have a sacred connection to Mother Earth, and we have been gifted with the ability to manifest ideas, dreams, life, and existence itself. This particular excerpt, even saying it now, gives me chills because it truly encompasses what we are here as Beast Friends to represent. The collaboration over competition is not just about the kiki, it's not just about empowering each other in business, but there is this whole notion of the woman superpower that we have to tap into. And the collaborator, the natural collaborator in us, causes us to build an energy force that truly busts open every arena of our lives. And in this case with Mashonda in the book, Blend, it was her motherhood and her co-parenting life, and something that is so important because this is her legacy, right? But we oftentimes see this in our businesses and in other areas of our lives. So I just want to encourage you guys to always dig deeper within yourself first and use that healing power to nurture your sister.
Your sister, yeah.
Right? Even what the Jane Club is representing, for us to come together, collab, and support in every way we can, you have to do the self-work first. So I had to share that, and it truly embraces our motivation with what we're doing in our movement as Beast Friends. And so we're so excited to add you as a Beastie.
As a Beastie.
Yes, and for you guys to be added as Beasties, and for you guys being here and coming together. And so we just wanted to say we appreciate you.
Thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate all of you, to Planned Parenthood, to the Jane Club, to Ty, and to Jess.
Ty.
We're super excited to start this journey right here with Beast Friends. Check us out. Beast Friends, like we said, is on SoundCloud. It's coming up on all platforms soon. You can follow us at Beast Friends Podcast on all of the social platforms. And we're just excited to continue the journey with you.
Yeah, and to share gems like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mashonda.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
until
ladies.
next time, Beasties.